Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, this is a humble request to put your mobile phones on silent mode and prepare yourselves for an enlightening session. Hindi cinema isn't just a reflection of life. For many, it is life itself. The stories, the icons, the dances, the souls. Oh, the songs. Film songs are not just songs, they're little philosophies of life. In celebration of this incredible institution, Google Arts and Culture presents a nostalgic trip back in time to revisit our favorite moments in Hindi cinema.
There's an academic to how India reflects very strongly in the cinema story.
Explore a unique retrospective of expertly curated content, rare images in high resolution, interviews with industry legends, virtual tours of iconic spaces, and behind the scenes chronicles. An experience that's immersive, inspiring, and occasionally melodramatic. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to you all for the Google Masterclasses and In Conversation sessions. The masterclass and In Conversation sessions are being conceptualized and conducted by International Film Festival of India in collaboration with Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute. We also take this opportunity to thank Google for sponsoring the session. This year, we are conducting more than 20 sessions consisting of master classes and in conversation sessions. In this session, we will be discussing Indian documentary on the world stage, and we will be joined by Ms. Kartiki Gonsalvws, Mr. R.V. Ramani, Mrs. Miriam Chandy, Mr. Sai Abishek, and Mr. Nilotpal Majumdar. All of them come across as some of the most important names when it comes to documentary films in India. So please put your hands together for our esteemed panelists. I will request the esteemed panelists to please come on stage now. Thank you. We would also like to welcome on stage Mr. Anshul Chaturvedi, the executive editor of the Metro Supplements of Times of India, for moderating the session. I would now like to request Mr. Armstrong Farme, Director of Films, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, to please come up on stage and felicitate the dignitaries. Can we please have a round of applause? Thank you so much, sir. I now request Mr. Anshul to please start the session.
So I'd like to confess, when I did my homework for the session last few days, as somebody who's a journalist who is more engaged with what is called mainstream cinema in the country, it's what I understand about. I was quite amazed at the optimism and the consistency that documentary filmmakers in this country have shown. Because when you read the list of what works for you and what works against you, in the second line there are a lot more boxes. After that, then you look at what's actually been happening, and I think it's something which is not talked about enough for what we actually achieved. And then the smaller things, like we keep reading about mainstream cinema going from scratch to shooting and getting over in 40 days, 45 days, and people are very happy about that. And then you look at the smallest budget work, and somebody's putting 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years of life into that single project. And you don't end up that project with buying a big house in Bombay or driving a S class. So actually, let me first start by stating that I have a newfound respect for the documentary space because there's a lot happening here which I don't think everybody understands. So credit to you for that. And then to start off, so I have a 2 3 layer structure in my head. We chatted once, but so when I saw the topic, the documentary on the world stage, my thoughts after my homework was that is that perhaps the only stage that the Indian documentary has? Because there is actually no equivalent Indian documentary on the Indian stage. Right? There are no rock stars in documentaries in India. You don't get rich, you don't get large screen openings, and if you look at the people who've done the best work, a lot of the money is coming from abroad. A lot of the recognition comes to you when you get a Western festival to acknowledge your activity and talk about it. After which, sometimes you don't even get that same award-winning activity screened back in the country. So it is the Indian documentary which is actually fighting its battles on the world stage inherently, and there it has been throwing above its weight. Hence, made quite a mark in the last few years. So if you look at the names, and this is just the last couple of years, but like from Writing with Fire to All That Breathes, The Elephant Whisperer, Against the Tide, which I hear you talked about very well these days, Night of Knowing Nothing. For the lay consumer who doesn't watch all documentaries perhaps, but if he just Googles Indian documentary plus Cannes, Sundance, Oscar, BAFTA, you have names popping up in 2022, 23, and possibly 24 as well from what we make out. So is this a flash in the pan space? Is this just a lucky break we're having, or is this part of a larger process? Is this likely to continue further from here, or so to bring it in cricketing terms? What we've been doing is this something like what the Indian or Australian teams have done in the World Cup, which comes from a legacy and from a system, or is this the Afghanistan team? Like, I don't know how you did it, but explain to me, please. So I'd like your thoughts, secrets. Maybe starting with you, Mari.
Thank you for that question. And I think for me, it's definitely something that happened in continuum. Um I mean, I'm very well aware of the legacy of documentary filmmakers before me. There were people like Anand Patwardhan, Deepa Dhanraj, a lot of filmmakers who built a certain brand of filmmaking, factual filmmaking, which we would actually, those were the days we have to go and get a tape rented from the store to watch it, and we would watch it because they were the truths of our times that connected with each of us. And I think with very little resources, they did what they did, which you brought up, which is, I think, the legacy we come from. And we've all built our own versions of storytelling from the strengths that they brought to the table. So I see myself as a continuum to what they had put in place. And in turn, I think I say I was one of the early ones to go international in that sense, and it was partly because of this. There were very little resources in India to support the kind of factual storytelling that you're aiming, which is cinematic as well, you know. So uh, going abroad, pitching internationally, and getting those resources to tell long timeline stories because when you're telling a factual story, you have to wait for those events to happen. You can't create it unlike in fiction. So to invest that time to build your craft and slowly kind of get it onto the world stage. And I think there have been like that almost continuity of people headlining different festivals. And today, the names that you listed out have all built on the legacy that was behind them. There have been institutions that have supported us as well, like Rocketch, that honed our craft, brought us together, brought those international sort of commissioning editors to the table, so that they very early sort of saw the films they wanted to and invest in. So it's been a organic process, and what you see today is not a flash in the pan. It's been very carefully built up, and it's reached a sort of point where it's making headlines.
You're optimistic that we'll be able to have sessions on this topic years down the line.
Definitely. There's no stopping storytellers. We've been doing it when we had no resources, and now the resources are here, so definitely we see much more. I think I have to begin with, I sort of got immersed into this new world with the Elephant Whisperer through my first documentary. So I'm really new to the industry, but I have been a storyteller, first with photography and now with a movie camera. So I think from the perspective that I come from, I was a struggling photographer, so there was definitely no money in that as well. And that transferred into this, I think. And in the beginning, I didn't really think that a story like this would be picked up, honestly, because first it was human animal, and then I had a lot of people telling me that it's not possible, that even mainstream things were not getting picked up, so documentaries, forget about it. But I remember telling them at that point, I will get it sold. I'm not sure how, but I will. And now when I really look at things, I think when I went for the Oscar campaign, I think that opened up a whole world of documentary storytelling. I haven't been immersed into the documentary world in India, but I was pushed into the Oscar campaign as part of a larger picture. And I realized there were so many storytellers and we were all connected by one thing that we all had impact different stories. There were stories from different parts of the world that we all wanted to tell. And we all united. And that's when I thought to myself, this is something that I would love to feel in India. I want that family around us. So I think when I really think about it, I think one of the biggest problems that we have is and I think we are in a stage where things are starting to change, but I think we're still very early in the process. I do see a lot of interest in local stories coming from India, and I think it's registered at the peak right now, and I hope that there's better change in the future. But again, post the Academy Award, I think it also just goes back to I'm just starting work on my next documentary project and I'm still going through the same process. I still have to go out there, slap the pitch. I still have to have the same kind of commitment. The Elephant Whisperers took 6 years of my life. from 2017 all the way up to 2023. And that entire chunk was just out of the picture because the whole time I was working in the field and I spent many days out in the field over the duration of the 6 years. It wasn't 6 years chock a block. And at that point, it was my first documentary, and I was navigating the flow of how things were supposed to come. So it's a relatively new journey, but I think we're kind of in the in between space. So how do things go from here for India for documentaries, and how can we? I think we need to really look at how money comes in and how we can get more funding to new storytellers, people who have stories that really want them to go outside, and and also the target audience is really important. Where do we want these to go?
So coming from the space that you are the most person, the most recent exposure to the global, the whole question of which documentary is better and who's made, and you talk to other people. I'm assuming when you go out there and see what other cultures are doing, countries are doing. Uh, is there any deficit at our end beyond the resources? Like if supposing we were to have funding options for Indian documentary makers at par with what you saw out there, if they had, how much would it improve our chances of doing very globally?
Well, I think the other, I mean, one of the big looming questions for me is, I don't know if I got lucky this time and had it picked up because I've been told that they're not going to do any more short docs. They're not going to look at documentaries, and this is after the Academy Award. So my question is there something that's going to come out of this into the future? Like, why can't documentaries have a mainstream platform? Why can't it be shown in? I mean, why can't we have theatrical releases for documentaries? And I think we need a solid audience. If mainstream cinema can take over the theaters for days, and sometimes movies that are big flops, then where's the space for real life stories? Why can't we have the same audience? Because I think post the Elephant Whispers, I saw that a lot of people were deeply connected. And not just to that, like all that Reads, Radiant Fire, they have such strong stories behind them. And they're so deeply rooted in actual people and actual stories. So I think there is a huge market for this. I don't think we've figured out how to tap into it and to get our country proud of what we're doing and get them a solid space and a stage to stand on.
Thank you, point taken. So representing the people who need to give platforms. No, but see, also here, no, please do educate us on both platforms because you know firsthand how platforms handle this content. But what she's saying, even mainstream theaters, they never ever give shows to a documentary. How is that? What is the commercial ROI?
So, first of all, I want to dispel that idea that we, as Warner Brothers Discovery, we do only this. Like, we work in non-fiction, we produce a lot of documentaries, we buy a lot of documentaries, we support a lot of filmmakers. So, there are, of course, networks like us who do this for a living. So, and I'm very optimistic about the nature of stories that's coming from India and that will continue to come from India because I think there are a lot of genuine voices that are being found now. The exposure has gone up tremendously over the last few years. People are watching more global sort of filmmaking. I mean, if I can plug another festival, I was at Giovanni and packed houses to documentary. People are queuing up outside and there were no seats to sit. So incredibly heartwarming to see. And even on the Discovery side, when we launched Discovery Plus, incredible amount of people wanting to pay to come and watch documentaries. We've seen the numbers. I can't reveal the numbers here, but we know there's a very passionate, dedicated audience out there who are probably, of course, some of them exposed to global, cinema and documentaries and that image, and some of them coming for the first time to even see what these documentaries are like. Because let's not forget that there's a sense of stigma also attached to documentary in India, unlike in Europe and in the Western market, which is slightly more has had its. I've said this in some other platforms as well. Cinema and documentaries have gone sort of hand in hand in those countries, and here, cinema, I mean like more commercial sort of cinema, sort of overtaken. So naturally, the ecosystem, like Mariam was saying, hasn't been developed as robustly as the commercial cinema side. So naturally, there's a bit of catch up for all of us to do as a country to make these stories more global in nature, the telling of it, the craft of it, in the way it is produced, in the way the topics are chosen. And a lot of them might be raw first time filmmakers everywhere. They also need guidance, development. They need to be handheld through this process. So a lot of these things, I'm happy to say that we've also sort of contributed, as a network to help find some of these new talents. We've had a bunch of shows around it, and we continue to engage on a lot of it. So I'm very bullish about the growth of this category from India. It will go definitely global. There's no other way.
So I have a follow-up question for you as somebody who understands, like you quoted Geo Mami, or you said, okay, you have numbers, understanding what who's consuming what. So please educate me on this point that, so right now when we're talking about documentary in the world stage, we're not talking about sales. We're not saying about this documentary made $2 million somewhere in a day. We're talking about recognition, awards, critical acclaim, right? In mainstream cinema, I have had experiences where people who made a good movie and were talking to me about that movie said to me, I have one request, please don't write that this is an award winning film, because nobody will come to watch it. Now, in the documentary space, when I say, okay, these are award winning filmmakers, how does it go? Does it help them get more viewers, or does it become, oh, this is that intellectual, cerebral, dark movie which I would come?
So there's two ways in which I can answer. So one, again, I'll tell you from my experience. I was watching documentaries on the big screen at the other festivals, which was not the one. But the minute I saw Sundance winner, Sundance recognized, or some other award, um, people were hooting all through the audience. They were very informed. They knew why that specific documentary got that award, why it was chosen, and things like that. So there is that really passionate crowd that's aware of the value of those awards. Then there's the maybe the uninitiated, let's put it like that, who's just coming in to understand what documentaries are, probably seeing it for the first time. For them, maybe there's that stigma attached to this, and again, you can't blame them because there's been a bit of a lineage to that thinking. So I think, but thankfully, the films that are coming out now and have been coming out over the last few years, I think it's dispelling that notion because they're more cinematic in nature. The entry point to that is not intellectual. It's perhaps more story driven, character driven, which they're used to even in cinema that they generally watch otherwise. So I think the way that they're crafting the narrative, even with Kartiki from Mariam, a lot of them are character driven, right? So naturally that eases the entry point to their understanding of that, and I think it will change over time. The very fact that the documentary panel happening here should hopefully educate people that it's not boring and it's not this. It's very exciting. It's very gripping. So yeah.
Start with your question. In fact, it started in 2012, 10, like this. Katia was the father and Hippie. And then Nishta Jain, Gulabi Khan, and traveling cinema, Charlie and Amir. No? It has been going on, it's almost a kind of, we see the almost last decade. Things are something very different in terms of acknowledgement, global acknowledgement in Indian documentary. That is because definitely, although we have a history and continuity, but we can see that there are tangible change in terms of creative freedom, artistic creativity. And not only that, somehow it's a much more um, deep-rooted reflection of our reality.
Could you elaborate on that for the lay audience? What is this change in treatment?
For instance, and I have to say something. It will be very difficult for general audience to get entertained by documentary. Documentary storytelling format is completely different. So, in a fiction situation, so we are the storytellers who have liberated from that of story. It's this storytelling is something different. We experience life. It's a kind of we say that we go confront life with fragments, kind of a experience. But at the same time, we have to look at it. It cannot be just scattered. We have to somehow coordinate ideas, reflections, and experience in a manner where we can communicate with people. So that way, and particularly when you go to reality, it's so strange and so overwhelming, and it changes you also. such a situation, you keep that, keep going with this experience and find out a kind of a more or less something communicable, if not logical, but something that the way you get not to really emote about your experience. That's how we do. Now, in that case, we cannot really compare mainstream narrative. Cannot but at the same time, at any given day, I pick up from my toolbox arbitrary 5 documentaries. I know that it will absolutely transform audience. So, in terms of so we get into reality, but we started evolving ourselves in terms of semantics, in terms of editing, in terms of foregrounding and backgrounding, backgrounding our characters. So there's quite a lot of creative strategies involved. That will, I think, the last 10 years, with the exposure of international documentary, which is a huge, at the same time, it's a very solid industry also. Uh, that exposure and experience, I think it has changed Indian documentary also.
You spoke about Katyabaz, right? And that reminded me, I had gone to see Katyabaz in a hall in near Saket, and it must have been like 20, 25, 30 day. It was not badly made at all. It was actually something you could sit through and see. And then later on, when Motwani spoke about it, so he said that I was disappointed at Katyabaz's reception, and he was not sure whether it was a failure of reaching out, quote unquote, to the kind of audiences who would watch a documentary in the theaters, or whether the medium was not entertaining enough for them. So as during my homework, I looked at this line, when he says, maybe I failed to reach out to the kind of audiences who would watch a documentary in the theaters. What is this audience?
Where? It is in Delhi? Which theater? Which city?
Delhi, yeah, yeah.
Delhi.
Yeah.
If you go to Paris, if you go to Bond, if you go to Calcutta, it will be the same thing. Because generally, that kind of narrative documentary offer, kind of experience this lies out from life, it is something people actually not, particularly nowadays, people are not aware of it, that what documentary can offer in terms of the discourses. And I have no idea of problematic kind of emotions, kind of information that you can share with audience. Possibly, we didn't culture it to reach out to the people. Now, just look at even a housewife sit in front of the televisions for 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. They're not looking at entertainment. It is actually they are trying to update their knowledge. Every creature, living creature, is basically knowledge-seeking entity. So if we go to life and bring out something strange or unknown, something we're looking at something from different perspective, why people don't, uh, why people will not watch it? But we cannot expect that instead of 20, the 2000 people are watching. It doesn't happen anywhere. Even if you say Sundance, it's an orchestrated screening. So create a kind of a captive audience. They come and watch it.
Yeah. So this documentary on the world stage, this reminded me of a dancer with whom I was filming, a classical dancer, who kind of performs in all over the world, gives performances everywhere. And I asked her this question, whether you would, how do you know whether people understand you, your dance is a classical dance. So she said that in an audience, I will know if there is one person in the audience who is connecting with me. That connection is enough. I don't need everyone. And then I kind of understood as that one person could be herself. You know, that there is something in you that you want to satisfy, and that you perform finally yourself. Like Kudiyatam, for example, they perform to a lamp. So this world stage does, for me, it exists in me only. It doesn't exist outside. So right from the beginning, I've been making films only to satisfy myself. That this is the way my movements are. This is the way I want things. This is the way it could be stupid, it could be silly, it could be amateurish, it could be like childlike, whatever. But I feel that it is taking me somewhere and making me connect to myself in a stronger way. And one do connect, like one do visit people, one do have friends, and you are aware of what's happening around and all that. But somewhere when you make your film, I'm not making a film for somebody else. I'm not making, definitely not for the world stage, definitely not for an Indian audience. But I make it for myself. But as I make it, I kind of sense, I can kind of feel that, oh, this film will, I want to show to this person, that person. Slowly those kind of ambitions start coming in. And so that's how it is. Like, for me, there's never been wanting to satisfy another person at all at any point of time. And only to reach a certain kind of honest logic within the narrative. Whatever you know. That way has been I've been making films and it's been quite satisfying, I would say. And this profit and sales and all that, I have decoded it in a different way for myself, which is basically that it is not like I make this product and I spend 5 rupees, I should get 10 rupees. I don't think like that anymore. And it is more like you make a film the way you want to, it's already a profit.
So what Mr. Ramani is saying, I'll take a 1 minute detour and talk to the audience on this point, because what he's saying is being said in different ways, different words by almost everybody I've spoken to documentary space. And so, you know, by logic, we come back and say, how do you maximize the reach? Because you're supposed to be after the reach. By logic, we come back and ask them, so how do you plan to increase the footfall of people who click on your movie? How do you plan to, earn more? I mean, he said, 5 rupees and 10 rupees. I think mostly he's spending five and getting back 4 rupees into paisa. So it's not a sustainable business model which drives you for the money. But I've also realized over this conversation over the last few days and today that for everybody in the documentary space, revenue is a secondary need. They are in this space not knowing that revenue will flow. They are in this space. Everybody whose documentaries we talked about, not one of them, I think, when they started making it, had positioned it as at some point I will be standing here with something in my hand. Because when you started making a documentary, any case, it takes you 5 years to finish. You cannot foresee what the market will be wanting or what the trend will be. It's not like civil services, be a subject, I'll watch, I'll get ready for history or political science. It's not like that. And therefore, whenever we look at market or whatever, there's always a caveat with almost all of them that I will change my narrative up to a point. And if beyond that, if the markets, the buying entity, whatever it is, they want me to modify my art beyond a certain form to make it more commercially viable, good for them, but I won't do it. Because finally, a documentary maker has to stay connected to his own tone, his own voice. It's never going to be completely facing the market. And I think they need to be buffered to a certain degree for that. And that's the next stage of my conversation point here, because coming from the field of journalism, for example, the closest I can think of is the editorial page. The editorial page does not attract advertising. It has no cartoons, it has no glam pictures. And our own service indicated is read perhaps much lesser than the sports page, for example. Yet, because it is the conscience of the paper, because it is saying things which need to be said, the paper buffers it. Whether or not something happens, it continues and it is given its clue. I think the documentary space needs to be given a sort of a buffering as an assured space, in the universe, even if it is not consumed as widely. And now I would want to move towards that genre of discussion. And in this case, please feel free to sort of speak whenever you want to speak. There's no need to go through me. And please.
No, with full respect of Ramani, he started documentary as a guru kind of thing. But I haven't seen any filmmaker actually making a film looking at the market. First of all, they do not have market perceptions. It's something, it comes from within. It's maybe reactive. You want to express your angst, patience, so it's something very special that it is like Premchand never uh, possibly started writing, looking at the market. You are not. So it is something that you take accountability to yourself and you start working on a project. Of course, you have to really travel through. path, where you have to really ensure resources. And, and these days, resources are available. So market is something that we really don't think about. But we know there are markets. When I speak in my own unique voice, there are markets. And people are there to support. That's how it works.
So I'd like to get a sense from. So I have two layers now of basic lines. One is that if we have to sustain the visibility that we have right now and retain not just the how do I say the mind space that documentary has globally, but also the enthusiasm, the motivation, the fire finally which makes documentaries run. It's not really the economics of it. What should be done differently by the filmmaking fraternity, and what needs to be done within India to build a structure, a buffer, for people to, like, if somebody here wants to start up in the documentary making stage, what is their takeaway? How do they enter this space? How do they actually, because a lot of international work is also about networking. And you've seen that as a newcomer, you struggle a lot to find something. And you yourself said that, sometimes people judge you for experience, but a newcomer's voice can be very, very interesting in a space like documentary. So I'll leave this open to all of you. But before we come to that, I just wanted from the two of you a specific take, because this is about the world stage. And because so much of what we do is being consumed by or even commissioned by the English speaking West primarily, obviously, it's not China or Russia. Yeah. How do you think we get a balance between, because you also said, if I had made this with a Western voice, it should be made different. I made it in a very original, raw voice. You've seen that space a lot in that area. So, how do Indian documentary makers balance the fact of keeping a very Indian, original voice while still working on something which is acceptable or consumable, which gets you the communication, the funding, and the support?
Well, with the Elephant Whisperers, I think it was more of a common thing with the fact that I was playing with human emotions. I have to, I mean, it was clearly a documentary that I was going for with impact. I wanted people to connect better with elephants, to understand them. So it was very clear from the beginning that I wanted people to watch it and to take an entire message back. And I think afterwards, I sort of realized uh, this entire thing of what was it that really made it connect with people across the world. And I think it boils back to human emotions. And I received artwork from lots of people across the world, from 2 year olds all the way up to 8 year old professional painters, oil painters, and people who started playing the music. And there was a whole lot of interaction from different parts of the industry and from people who were connecting with the documentary on many different levels. And I think that sort of, and I spoke to a few of them, and one of the takebacks was that they sort of got their own emotions. They looked at a woman in belly, and they were able to sort of place their lives in that picture. And I think it boils down to what connects us as human beings. What is something that's universal? Because all the time, the things that are trying to divide us, we have countries, we have religion, we have so many things that are always trying to tear us apart. And from this one documentary that I made, I think it's more about what are the things that unite us as humanity. How can we all connect and be a part of something bigger? And I think that's where the emotions come into play. We all feel love, we all feel pain, we all feel loss. And those things, when you look at yourself, when you look at somebody else's life, you're able to put yourself into the other person's shoes. And I think that's why the Elephant Whispers was so relatable to so many people. Because when they took Raghu away, for those who have not watched it, sorry, but, in that aspect, you can really see that people looked at it as their son being taken away. They could look at Raghu as being their son. And I think that imposing their own emotions onto something else really helps and really focusing on things that unite us together. I wanted to add something to the previous conversation. I think I mean I grew up in the 1980s, and I think documentary was always a word that sort of just took you into a different space that, oh, it's not entertaining and it's something boring. And I think that's something that sort of stood by many people. And even today, when I say, "Do you want to watch a documentary?" people are like, "Nah, let's see what else there is. Let's go to the crime section." And I think that is the question: how do we start changing the way people look at documentaries? It's not always archival. It's not always about a chunk of history back in time. It's not always really boring. And there are different types of documentary. And I think that's something we have to accept and also understand what documentaries really are. What are the different types of documentaries? I remember just after I won the Academy Award, people were like, oh, how much money did you earn? But the thing is, people are just unaware with the fact that you don't earn money with the Academy Award. You don't earn any money. But people are just unaware of that. I think it just goes back. I think we really need to start opening up about the documentary world, talking to more people about what it actually is about, and showing people the different types of documentaries. I think it all starts with a little bit of education as well. And I think that's something we could all benefit from is just understanding where documentaries come from. They're real life stories. They're beautiful. People, I found many people who'd love to get immersed into something like that, but they just sort of see it as a block, but they'd rather watch a big blockbuster film over a documentary. So I think documentaries need to rise onto a space that everyone feels comfortable and they understand what it really is to enjoy it and to understand it better. Um, So I think I mean, to respond to your question, for me, every film is a journey. It's something that you're embarking on to learn yourself. And it's not that you know everything, but you're sharing that sort of inner journey that you've taken with the world. And it's transformative in that sense. It transforms the person who is making the film as much as it when it connects to the audience. It transforms the audience as well because you're part of a journey. You're not. I am from the world of journalism, and that's very different because you're getting different people's opinions and you're juxtaposing it to create another opinion. Whereas this is a very sort of immersive journey. To answer your question about what can be done, I think that having done it, I feel that as a filmmaker, I wear too many hats. I'm my own director, I'm my own producer, I'm distributing my film in the global market. And for many years, when I would be at IFFI, which is the biggest documentary market in Amsterdam, it would you would see that one Indian over there, you're on your own, whereas say Korea, which is a much smaller country, you see a group of filmmakers, you have somebody there, they're working collaboratively, and I think that's a spirit that's missing over here. Yeah, in terms of like each one is embarking on this very intensive journey over a long timeline with very expensive resources, I would say. It's no longer easy to sustain yourself over like 6 years or 5 years with that sort of filmmaking equipment. And not everyone, like Ramani shoots his own films. For many of us, we work with small crews. We still need to pay people for 6 years to continue to do the work that they do. So there need to be some sort of a collaborative ecosystem where we can make these films. I truly believe, as much as other people have said there's no market, I believe there is a market for documentaries. I have seen over 20 years, I go to colleges, show my films, and I'm seeing students reference other documentaries. So even if it's not available in India, they managed to get that film, watch it, and they're quoting that film to me. So even that unavailability of getting that film is not an impediment for them to actually go and seek it. So I feel like there is a market, there are the filmmakers telling those stories, but it is not going to be that what you take from a fiction world you transpose onto documentaries and that is your market and that is the way. No, there will be new rules. I have also done theatrical release, like you mentioned, Katya Bas, and I dispute what you said about Vikram Motwani saying what he did, because what are you comparing? A film release in that week will have a budget of how many crores, and how did if I'm getting my film out, it's by word of mouth. So you cannot compare. We do not have. I mean, it's amazing that we brought the film to the theater, but then
So the two of you have been in the space longer than most of us, and you even today you're educating younger people how to get into this space. when you see these films doing well, irrespective of the motivation, right? Irrespective of the finance, non-finance, whatever. But if films are today being talked about, and you have young people coming to you and sitting with you saying, "I want to start into the world of documentary making," what would you advise them as of today? What changes would you advise, which maybe you may have said something differently 10 years back, 15 years back? Both of you.
No, I would only say what I'm doing basically. Just do your films, don't worry about anything. Because it's like, a product is, any product can be sold today. Any product. So if you say film is a product, it can be sold. But it has to be worked upon. You need to work on selling. There is a, you have to put in effort. For example, in my case, I make a film and then I go to next film. So there is no effort from my side to do anything. And also, there was a time when found, we found, I would say, the film documentary filmmakers found an avenue for distribution through a another friend who wants to take it up. And that I thought would solve my problem. Like, I thought like, okay, I've given all my films to you, you figure out how to sell it. It's not my concern anymore. But that lasted for some time, but it didn't flower in a way that we would like to. So that was it was kind of a cooperative in a way, but not definitely cooperative, but in a way we were all together. Many documentary filmmakers finally gave their films to them. And it was distributed. It was distributed to many avenues that which I would not have even thought of. Uh, but it lasted for some time, and that kind of initiative is lacking at the moment. Because we are all busy making our films, and I'm already into 3, 4 films working on at the same time. And it's like there's no time to even sell one copy of my film or one DVD. DVD to sell again. So in terms of selling, the the DVDs are gone now. No, so nobody wants to buy DVD. There's no copy buying and all. It's over. So it's only OTT platform. That's what everybody. Or if you online, they say again, can you send the link to online? I don't put my film online. No, I don't put my film on YouTube. And I say, you ask and I'll give you. I'll give you the password. Because I want to know who is seeing my film. And I love showing my film to small audiences where I know people, there's a discussion that happens. Everybody interacts with each other. So it's a very healthy culture, I would say, which I'm promoting all the time. And it is happening, like a lot of the small schools, colleges, alternate spaces, say, let's call it alternate spaces, where there's a projection possible that you can sit and talk. Those things are happening all the time, and I do that constantly. Average 30, 40 audience members. I'm very happy. And more than 100, I get scared. So it is like, it is okay. I mean, I'm saying it depends on what you want to do. I mean, you can decide your ways of selling, your ways of distribution. Need not everything may not go into one particular fast track. You know what we put. So if somebody has gone into fast track, then I can congratulate a clap. But it doesn't mean anything to me. But it's okay. I appreciate that. I like watching big blockbuster films. I love watching it. But that's all it is. But when I make a film, I make it on my own terms, and I make it only my aesthetics, my perspectives, my sense of connection, my discovery, my search. It's only that. So I can't really connect with any of the other comparisons at all. And and also to free filmmaking from various other templates, I would say. Various things that are becoming marketable or commercialized. And filmmaking is largely selling. Very few honest work like an artistic possibilities are existing. Otherwise, it's all about this paisa, bana sakte hain, that kind of a language is there, which is fine for me. But I try to be the other side where I'm even free from that. It doesn't bother me, okay, whatever funding that is available. Like Vidya when she was saying that, the funding that is available for a documentary funding available abroad in US or Canada or Australia or Europe, Western countries. It's mind-boggling. Okay? And compared to what we're doing. And I mean, I've been part of Rockets also right from the beginning, first started it. I've been going there constantly and even pitched my films there. And want to just understand how the people respond. So it's been quite learning experience. But you also sense a certain kind of criteria what how the films can be made and how what films work and all those kind of things also gets quoted. And now it's your position, it's your choice whether how much you want to do this or how much you want to go back to yourself and those kind of things. And I mean, you can choose whatever. You can sell your film in a major way. You can promote your film. You can be the one of the biggest earning member filmmaker. It can be fine. But I want to retain that films are made on a personal.
I'm not an artist like Ramani. Thing is that if someone comes to me, my first advice will be that it's a storytelling. It's very most I could never imagine that I'm talking about sales. Absolutely out. So definitely I've been working with young people. The thing is that what I understood, I came from a kind of literature, right? So in Bangla, I always found the documentary is something that really reflects my aspirations, what I want to be. And I never get into the fiction. Because I believe the poetry is the most profound form of fiction. So my advice would be to go back, and just revisit, reflect on, and see that how you can evolve your story. But don't make the film this year, next year. Watch films, get into kind of somehow you have to really invest in learning the craft. It's very, very important because the way the documentary language has been transformed, and kind of we see the new mode of applications, new mode of characterizations, which is definitely deeply formed kind of reconstructed storytelling. So there's a craft that we have to learn, and we have to also look at ourselves at what we have been talking about, the kind of things we are making. Out of thousand films, pick up one or two and going to Sundance and going to Oscar. It's kind of a dirt, the number of films that we have. Could we really engage filmmakers in terms of understanding the larger scope of craft? Of course, that each and everybody is, because it is, as I say, this is a very liberated form. It doesn't have a kind of a standard protocol to apply in every film. But yes, you can tell your story definitely in your own ways. And trust me, we are more or less liberated from the form that was imposed upon us. But at the end of the day, how you are addressing your audience, what is your sense, what is your experience of life, how you live with life, what is your sense of history. All these things combined come into documentary storytelling because eventually you are making a conversation with life or someone living a life, a life that I live. So it's very complex. So you have to get into this and open up your mind. And as I say that the way writer spends time years after years, I know that my friends, to write one book, 20 short story collections in 2 years. Even after publications, get back and just refinement. So it will definitely take time, and we somehow we create a kind of we need to create a kind of ecosystem. I definitely don't believe that it's happening anywhere. It is happening on the Sunday in my house. It doesn't help. Oh, it doesn't help. All you have to do that those discourse and discussions has to really is something that we can make others. It should be participatory. Very simply, two or three things I just want to say. We do not have a documentary, standalone documentary school. Even a course of 2 months in SRFTI and FTI will not help. We don't understand documentary the way it should be evolved as a storyteller. I should be. It's a very different thing, very challenging. and also how to handle reality. It is so strange. Today I take your interview on camera. I will believe that you are telling truth because this is the moment that you are living in. The next day when I talk to you, you come up with a different level of interpretation. So it's really difficult. In that, so we have to really create a kind of pedagogy, not a kind of only standalone course. Why not really as is my I mean earlier I'm talking about what should I tell to young filmmakers. Now maybe policymakers I'm addressing to. We should be having a standalone documentary school. We should be having a kind of also we need to also train teachers, very honestly. Suppose I'm coming from a film fiction school, okay? My cinematographic perception is something. I understood a certain kind of editing model, It doesn't go with document at all. It's a different world. So there has to be a kind of a completely different system which I can deal in and get out. And we need a standalone documentary school. Maybe why not two or three? It's funded by government. Second thing is, of course, there has to be a kind of a national fund available with us. This will not only give a kind of safe fund to documentary makers. Suppose it is not only IFFI that kind of discussion is going on. Throughout the country, different cities and suburbs, there are institutions that bring this. Now, you know that Creative Europe or the national funds support those kind of initiatives. Be it festival-based workshop, is a lab, is a kind of collaborative discussions to support them. And without being getting into it, it's autonomous independent institutions. They should getting funds. They should be getting fund support. There should be a kind of national fund, which maybe it's an independent body gives it funds to filmmakers. Well, something has to be there. So without any fund and without any resources, I don't think that we'll keep getting international funds. We are still getting because of the skill that we have demonstrated, the quality that we could offer is still getting. But nowadays the political situations only depends. Now most of the money for documentary has gone to filmmakers coming from Ukraine or filmmakers, European filmmakers making films on Ukraine. So it will change. So where is the resources nationally? It's not there. And Doordarshan being the kind of most sensible channel even to me, if I need to learn about craft, or something, I listen to a writer. This is the only public television existing. But this being the kind of a third largest television industry, we do not have a 10-minute slot for documentary. So this is the only medium through which we can reach out to the audience. So unless you create an interface between audience and creators, it will never happen. This panel discussion or something else, it will definitely it's very sporadic, and very fragmented. We need to look at the larger scenario, larger canvas, and everywhere in the world, it is the same. Who took initiative? We generated the system. Then private players started uh, coming into it. Now, one of the most important things that is happening is the equity funding that is coming in documentary, which is recoupable. That means that's kind of money that is coming in. And it doesn't only create market and value, increase the value of the product. It is creating incredibly fantastic data. And if you look at all the things, it is not a current affairs and blah 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 so-called document. Everywhere it is being recognized. All the festivals, except the Oscar and except BAFTA, it has all the major awards. And your experience also that it's a very different kind of document. So it's there. Thing is that we need to just transform ourselves. We need to leave a kind of a system where the filmmakers like him are making more than 20 films and 3 or 6 years, 7 years, they've been shooting. He's actually, although he's talking about his conviction, but it's very, it is hurting me to see a filmmaker working for so many years. He has to officially announce, that I am absolutely infinite parts, and I don't care about my audience. That's the thing that we have to address too.
You spoke about the film school. You spoke about funding, like other countries have. About looking at this whole thing afresh in terms of participation. Any other thoughts from the panel on how do we build a documentary making culture in the country?
There are a few top of mind thoughts as a film buff myself. I've been grown up watching movies, documentaries, all kinds of uh, one of those things that really inculcated, interest and passion into that is also other people sort of following. So the film clubs, for instance, they need to be tapped into. People can come together, passionately discuss, debate, ideas are exchanged. And if you look at the new French New Wave or neorealist films in Italy, or even here in India in 60s, 50s, whatever, right? So it's been in that time period, a lot of people were doing that together. They were supporting each other. You edit one film and you're an actor, another film, directing something, producing something, French film, even the Korean wave that happened, right? So I think filmmakers and friends and the community need to support each other. That's one, so that their own passions are sort of fulfilled. I think that's one. Second, at an industry level, like if you look at me sitting on this side of the board, I think we need to also do more to support first-time filmmakers. Like I mentioned earlier, the development process. It might not be like a Shah Rukh Khan film or Salman Khan. You can't compare that, right? So naturally, another. We use different metrics to compare what is success. So I think as a network, we do think, and other networks should also sort of lean into that to support new filmmakers by giving them funds and handholding them through that process. I think that's the other thing. Um, Apart from that, I think the third part is the distribution. I think it is the biggest bone of contention because there's not enough places where they can watch apart from say a few other festivals. You need more distribution channels apart from the 3 4 OTTs that have documentaries in India. We need more people officially programming docs and non-fiction so that it becomes part of regular conversation and not just a one-off once in a while. It becomes, only when award season happens. I think some
I want to add on to that. I think the other thing is finances. I keep coming back to that because I actually worked as a cinematographer before I became a director for a couple of years, and there were 4 projects that I worked on, but I didn't get paid. And documentary equals no money. And I think that needs to change as well. I think people need to start paying people in documentaries because it's still way more time, a lot of efforts, and it's looked at as art, so it's not paid. And you have to question that. Like, why is mainstream with somebody who can act paid double the amount of somebody in documentary? I think that needs to really go back. Why are we paying our crew members much less? Why, if you say you're from documentary, your paychecks go to half immediately? That's a question to address. Because why are we any different? I think it needs to be collectively the same across all platforms. That if you're in the filmmaking field, the rate should be about the same. It shouldn't be an immediate drop. Documentary should not equal no money. And with Kartiki on this one, that I feel that it's time that we create self-sustaining models for documentary, and it's not just for the love of the art and the craft. Uh, I think it's a wealth. It's cultural capital. If we are here today and we're sharing films, films connect. And when you're talking about real films, factual films, they connect in a way that no other films can. That's the fact of the matter. You can forget a fiction film, you will never forget the real life characters in a documentary that touches you. So the minute that perception and value you attach to those kind of films that are going out, they build bridges between cultures, between people. They are, they're really like sort of cultural wealth, I would say. So we need to put our money where with things we value, and building an ecosystem around it, and filmmakers, documentary filmmakers as well, not feeling ashamed to say, hey, you know what, I need to sustain myself with my craft and what I'm bringing value to. I think it's high time. It's we should. I don't want to be that person up on a pedestal with a begging bowl actually at my feet.
Something. Yeah, basically, in terms of what can be done, as Nilotpal has mentioned, certain strategies. I can also say some few things, but we don't know what can happen with the government in mind and all that. But certain things can immediately be taken care of, which is one thing that usually there was a practice of, say, national award-winning films usually get an entry into Indian panorama straight away. You know, uh, especially the top films, best film. This time it has not been happening. So I was wondering why that we did not find an automatic entry. So if you do want to promote documentaries as a culture, like you're mentioning about the culture, Shaji Gurun once mentioned this thing that Indian cinema holds the emotion of the country, and documentary does it far more importantly, distinctly, because in a raw form. And so I think the preservation of all these classics and all this happening at one level, but documentaries preservation, nobody's even thinking. Fantastic films have been made right from 1980s, 70s onwards. Those films are so important. Nobody's paying attention to restore them or keep them as one of the important element in our history. That apart, I'm saying cinema theaters are important to acquire. Like NFDC had cinema theaters at one point in time. Even now they have. Like in Chennai, for example, there's an amazing cinema theater in NFDC owned cinema theater where films are being screened on payment. Okay, and I have screened my recent films of mine there, and many shows have been screened through sponsorship and all that. But ideally, these 100-seater small auditoriums, like what they have in Film Fusion in Mumbai, fantastic auditorium, state of the craft, and but that is going waste. Nobody is using it, and it's waiting for the MIF festival or from censor copies, screening and all that. But I'm saying these places could be used as a public areas where show films regularly. You choose whatever films you want to, no problem. But show them, show them, invite, create a huge pool of people who can be invited and who can come become the culture. So these alternative films which cannot find spaces in this commercial circuit where others push you out. Here you can find those spaces. Good films can be shown, and people are ready to watch. I can tell you, people are ready to watch documentaries. It's just that they don't know where to go and see it. OTT platforms are creating a certain kind of avenues like Netflix says documentary series, and I've seen those documentary series. They are fiction films, completely rebuilt, reworked, and whatever. So I don't know what is the nature of documentary today. Whether you call it docu-fiction or fiction with a little bit of interviews here and there and voiceover that becomes documentary. Like the jury members of this panorama today, I spoke to some of them. They said that 80% of the films submitted for panorama this time for documentaries were fiction films. So they said, like, we don't know what's happening. People are submitting their fiction films as documentaries. And yesterday I heard this Philippines director talking that his film, it is a feature film, was entered and they showed it in the documentary section. So it is very interesting. Like, there are many festivals, like including the one that you cannot name. That festival also now shows documentaries, fiction films, experimental films, animation films, all in one platform, all in one screen. I've attended many of those kind of festivals internationally where there are no classifications, there are no hierarchies between these things. You see the film and you know whether it works or not. It doesn't matter whether you spend so many money or so many money, whatever. It doesn't matter. The film works or not. It's what matters.
Before we open this to the audience, I think my takeaway, and correct me if I'm wrong, the thing that we are broadly coming to one is that state slash establishment, now whatever that could be, whether it is OTT platforms, whether it is theatre chains, whether it is official government platforms, the fact that we need to buffer your space a little more. Otherwise, every documentary becomes this thing which sort of put half a ticket for and get nothing back. So we should not be romanticizing the pain of making a documentary. We should make it something viable which you can do more often. On the side of the audience, on their behalf or my behalf as well, I think the point is that a lot of us know about a lot of documentaries which we have not even watched. So we know the name, but are we paying money? Are we putting our time into that space, or are we just clapping from afar? Hey, glad you won something. I think as an audience, we need to sort of switch off from that branding of the Indian audience as people who go to watch something because they want to forget about the world. Sometimes we have to go to watch something because we want to engage with the world as well. That's important from us, from the audience perspective. The state will do what it will, but I think on both sides, I think we begin to acknowledge that what you've done, what the Indian documentary universe has done despite circumstances, not necessarily because of circumstances. And if we were to provide you with audience support and state support, maybe this could be something far, far bigger. Any questions? Yes. Yeah.
So before any one of you start asking from the Sarkari side, from the government, from the government side, I just want to highlight some of the questions which the panel has suggested. So I'm Mr. Armstrong. I am director in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Just wanted to answer some of the questions, not the questions, but the suggestions that the panel has put up. For the suggestions that you have put up, Majumdar sir, we will be so happy to take up a short-term courses, if not a very lengthy course in SRFPI and FTIR and another film school coming up in Canada. Please, please design a course. We'll be happy to take not only your inputs, but inputs from all over the film, from the documentary lovers to put together a 3 months course, 2 months course. Government will be happy.
I just thank you very much, and that's really heartwarming what you say. But 3 months course will not work properly.
So
You have to make at least 2 years standalone course, because just 10 days you cannot tell your students, go shoot a documentary, then go out of the door and shoot a kind of a child or maybe this will not make documentary.
So for 2 years course, I cannot make my commitment right now. But you are mentioning a short-term courses, but that is easy, much easier for us.
Let's start your intent will suffice. The commitment will come later.
So that is the first, and funds being not available. Many of you argued on both the sides. Ramani sir was saying, no, I make films irrespective of whether it sells or not. But the two ladies here says that, we need funding. So I cannot answer both in one go, but what to say, my ministry, our ministry is also doing its best. We put forward certain portion of the funding and tell you can apply for this through NFTC. And I'm happy to tell you that from this year, from this year Film Bazaar onward, the ministry has sanctioned 20 crores rupees. It doesn't matter whether they pick up animation, documentaries, feature films. Earlier, Film Bazaar would pick up films or documentaries. We only do matchmaking, we do not fund. This year, we have sanctioned 20 crores, telling the Film Bazaar experts and those jury members and others, you pick up anything, try to make money out of it. 20 crores we just sanctioned. The sanction order is with me if you do not. And one of you also said you do not have even a 10 minutes time slots in Doordarshan. I agree. I myself have been very upset trying to get this done. We are not giving up as yet. We will try to definitely find time slot in the Doordarshan, starting with the National Film Awards winning documentaries and films. That's and lastly, one of you mentioned that the screens space in NFTC Chennai and Bombay not being utilized. it is always somehow occupied and utilized, especially in Bombay, with the numbers of films being put forward for censorship. We do not find much time. But nonetheless, on weekends, especially when there is no examination of the films, your suggestions will be well taken and will be opened up to the theaters. And it's not only there, it's in Pune also. The NFAI, the hiring charges are extremely low. Please make use of all of those facilities. Thank you.
Good evening to the people on the stage and good evening everyone. Myself, Nilanjan and I'm from Tamil Nadu and I'm a former mariner. I studied cinematography after my left my profession and I'm working with editor B. Lenin sir for the past 8 years. I worked for more than 13 documentaries. Even I worked with Dr. Nyanara Sekar and IAS. So, and I am one of the mentor in NFDC. So I would like to say something about documentary. Can I share? Okay. I don't want to shoot some questions. I have some suggestions and what I've done in the past 5 years, I would like to share. So during the lockdown, there was a app introduced, Clubhouse. So in Clubhouse, I started a group that is called Documentary Filmmaking. I have 6,000 followers. I used to share knowledge about documentary filmmaking each and every weekends. Also, I'm a course designer for Satyabama University, which is deemed university in Chennai. I found that there is no course for documentary, especially documentary filmmaking, throughout India. So I had a suggestion to start a course about the documentary filmmaking. At present, means they started by last year. So for first year visual communication, they have introduced a subject as a documentary filmmaking, which was initiated by me. And another thing is, I would say, so actually, sir, Mr. Ramani sir, his documentary is a precious documentary, and American in Madras, which is the best documentary which ever done in India. That is, it is in all education institutions. While studying about history of cinema, we must watch this documentary because I'm from the land where uh, the Elisa Duncan worked. I'm from Salem. So during history of cinema, if you take the place which is giving most valuable things is Indian cinema. Yeah, I will shoot my questions. Yeah. So my suggestion is, as a senior people, documentary filmmakers, you have to conduct more classes through the online series. Instead of getting approval from NFDC and all, you can open up a platform and you can conduct classes, master classes, or online. That's the first thing.
So I need to give the mic to
And
people also.
I want to share few things.
So this, I didn't give time for that.
Okay, okay. Shortly, I will finish. Thank you.
Actually, there's a documentary filmmaker somewhere in 1950. You mentioned only Deepika and the He's a filmmaker. He made a lovely film. He made so many films. I think he's an Anglo-Indian. He made a documentary film where a small officer wants to peace the whole country, the whole subject. He doesn't have place to peace. That's a documentary. He made so many films. Anglo-Indian. I forgot the name. And people watching documentaries hardly 5% anywhere in the world, or 10% anywhere in the world.
What's the question, sir?
Yeah, it's also a question. Commentary question. We spoke 15 minutes. Please give me 15 minutes. So, what I'm telling is, so Satish Ray and Runal films both they look like semi-documentary and semi-fiction. Even they're not full time. And question to Ramani is, Ramani, I have seen all your films, but 80% of your films you made it on semi-celebrities. You said you like your film And it's okay if somebody, one person likes it. So why did you choose all the celebrities to make your documentary film? Semi-celebrities.
Lovely question.
The boy in the blue t-shirt, please. Give the mic next after.
Let him answer, yeah. Let him answer, yeah.
Let him answer.
Let him answer.
Why semi-celebrities only?
Hi, excuse me.
Then telling what
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can look straight.
Oh, yeah.
My question. Actually, I have a few observations to share, and I would like to
Question,
yeah, yeah.
not observation.
All right. I would like to know the Abishek after I share my opinion. If I have a platform, I'll share. So, ma'am, you know, congratulations. So, I have grown up watching a lot of documentary wildlife. I've been a wildlife. While we were having this conversation, I realized that I paid about 150 rupees at the theaters to watch a documentary. I paid about 15,000 maybe to watch films. So the film which I watched was by Amoga Varsha. I think so. He made a film documentary called Wild Karnataka. So one thing which fascinated me was Karnataka because I'm from Bangalore, and the second thing was David Attenborough. Because, like I said, I've been yeah. So the question is, I think what Amoga Varsha, what he's done is there was a film which came last year, and I think it was a documentary, but it was more phenomenal than any commercial films. That was called Ganta the Gudi. So I think he got it right. Get the everyone loves story. Now your story, I think I watched it before it got Oscars because
Can you come to the question, please?
yeah, I think the question is nothing. I think Amoga Varsha has got something right. And you, Kartiki ma'am, have got something right.
I'm so sorry to cut you off. There are so many people waiting to ask
Sure, sure.
questions. And I think we have time only for one more question. And that should be a question. So please, one last question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mariam, I want to ask all the moderators and panelists about what is your favorite Indian or global documentary. I also want to ask what led you into this space, your experience and any upcoming releases.
That's a very long answer. What are your favorite documentaries? Anything that
Pass. Pass. I mean, I saw one recently called Against the Tide, Southern Cross, so, at festival. So I thought it was very, very well done. It's been 6 years making.
Mine too. For this year, Saturday Girls Against the Practice.
I have so many things.
Thank you so much. I think we all have learned
Ramani never
something.
answered.
Please
Ramani
give
never
a big
answered.
round of applause
Ramani
to
never answered.
Kartiki Gonsalvws,
Ramani
R.D.
never
Ramani,
answered.
Mariam Chandy Sai Abishek, and Nilotpal Majumdar for giving us their valuable time for this wonderful session. And a big round of applause for Anshul Chaturvedi. Please, can I have a big round of applause?
Questions unanswered. Ramani never answered. Questions unanswered.
We also thank the 54th International Film Festival of India and Satyajit Ray Film and Television Institute for organizing this wonderful session. We thank you, the audience, for your patience, for your questions, for being with us for this wonderful experience. We hope to see you for the next one. Thank you.